Hello everyone, welcome to the second session on research and academic writing. This is part 2, which talks about parts of a research paper. Let's start. Okay, so we'll move directly into the topic. These are the parts of a research paper: an abstract, introduction, literature review, methodology, data analysis, results and discussion, conclusion and future work, bibliography, acknowledgement and appendix. But let me tell you, these for a literary research paper, all these parts may not be there. But be it a scientific research paper or a literary research paper, for every research paper, an abstract, an introduction, literature review, conclusion, uh, and bibliography, all these are very important. These are the must-haves. Now, methodology, data analysis, results and discussion and all depends on the topic which you choose. We'll look into each of the parts in detail. Then I'll tell you which are the important parts for a literary research paper. A very important part of a research paper is its abstract. An abstract is a self-contained and short synopsis that describes a larger work. Say, for example, a reader might not get the whole research paper to read. They'll get only an abstract because that is the only part of the paper that is published online, or in most conference proceedings, only abstract is published. So when a reader or when someone reads the abstract, they should be able to understand what the research paper is all about, what the topic is, what would be the outcome, and all the important things are to be mentioned in the abstract, but it should be very short, like around 200 to 250 words. In 200 to 250 words, you need to be very confident, very clear, and straight to the point. That is how an abstract is to be prepared. Another importance of abstract is that potential reviewers only see the abstract when invited by an editor to review a manuscript. That means if you are planning to publish one of your papers in a journal, and one particular journal is journal invites papers, so they'll ask you to send your abstract at first, or even if you send the full paper, they will review the abstract first. They will not sit and read the whole paper before selecting it. They'll just read the abstract, and if they like the abstract, or if they understand, if they think that the abstract is a perfect one, they'll ask you for the whole paper. That happens a lot of times. Therefore, the abstract should be that perfect. Only if the abstract is perfect will you get a chance to present or publish your full paper. Another importance of abstract is that it is mostly indexed by search engines. That is, if your paper is published somewhere, your research paper is already published somewhere in online or somewhere, the search engines generally index the abstract alone. So if a fellow researcher who is working in the same field is searching for a paper which would be of help for them, they'll just search using the keywords. The If the keywords are available in the abstract, your abstract will be also shown in the search, or your articles will be also shown in the search. Therefore, it is very important to use the keywords which you use in the research paper to be used in the abstract as well. That is, use the keywords that you use in the research paper in the abstract as well, because most of us search using the keywords, right? So that is to be remembered. Also, an abstract should be very clear and confident, like the writer or the author should be very confident about the findings. Keep the abstract very punchy and straight to the point. Be specific. Don't brag too much. Don't write too much in abstracts. In 250 words, you should be very clear. It should be very clear what the paper is all about. So be specific and be straight to the point. A good abstract should contain the topic, the purpose of research, a scope of research, results, and conclusion. All these things are to be covered in a very short paragraph of 250 words maximum. So you should be very specific about mentioning all these things within that 250 words. You should be able to explain what your topic is, what purpose this research has, and what scope this research has, what is the outcome, result or outcome of the study, and what is your conclusion about it. All these things are to be mentioned in an abstract. Here is a sample abstract on the topic mediating feminine subjectivity and identity in science fiction writing. This is one of my papers which was published very recently. So I have given it just as a sample. You may read through it later. I'm not going to read the whole thing and waste our time. So you may come back and look into it. I'll share the presentation slides with you. However, there you need to look into it is the topic is mentioned there. Then you have this title abstract, and the topic is explained, everything is explained, and then finally you have a section which says keywords. The keywords in this research paper is gender identity, subjectivity, feminism, camouflage, and monster. So these keywords are mentioned there. So if my paper is there on an online database, when a fellow researcher of mine search for gender identity, my paper would be indexed because this abstract is indexed. That will be there in the search. That is the importance why we should be giving the keywords correctly. Okay, then the most important part that comes after an abstract is the introduction. Introduction is a brief overview of the topic and the reason for conducting the research. Now, this is a perfect place to set the scene and make a good first impression, because after reading the introduction, a reader could be able to understand how the rest of the paper is going to be. So make sure that you have a perfect introduction. You use the right vocabulary. You include all the major points without skipping any. So it is the very important to make a good first impression. That is how important an introduction is. Also, it is often recommended to write an introduction after finishing the other sections, because not everyone will be able to figure out what exactly we need to put in an introduction section until we have seen a big picture. That is, only after writing the whole paper, only after writing the major body of the paper will we get an idea on what is to be included in the introduction. Mostly in research papers, the introduction should introduce the paper itself. So what is to understand what is there in the paper, we should be writing the paper first. So it is recommended to write the introduction after finishing other sections. And also it is very important to sound very confident about the chosen subject area and back up the arguments with appropriate references. That is, as I have already told you, after reading the introduction, the reader must have a clear idea. They must have a clear idea of what to expect from the rest of the research paper. Therefore, an introduction should sound very confident. The reader should get an impression that the author has a very vast knowledge about the subject area, and the author should back up the arguments with appropriate references in the introduction itself. Now, the introduction section of a research paper should include a general introduction, problem definition, gaps in the literature, problem solution, study motivation, aims and objectives, significance and advantages of the work. These are the things which you should be including in an introduction. After the introduction comes the literature review. This is a kind of a must-have section or a must-have part in every research papers, but it may be a part of the introduction section as well, or it can be written as an independent section. It's up to you and your instructor. A literature review should clearly demonstrate the author's good knowledge, that the author has a good knowledge of the research area. That is, when you choose a topic to work on, you should understand all kind of a background information about the topic, whether this is a properly dealt topic before, whether someone else has worked on similar topics before. All these things should be understood. For that, you read literature related to the topics, related to the area that you work on, so that you gather more information, so that you can find out what are the gaps in the previous researches, things like that. That is why literature review is important. It is also a critical appraisal of previous studies related to the current research area. It is where you may critically appraise the previous studies related to the current research area. And this is a perfect place to coin the research question and justify the need for such a study. As I have mentioned, when you read through previous literatures or previous studies, you may find a gap in that study which you will be able to fill. So that is when you justify the need for such a study. When someone else has already studied your topic, why would you study the topic again or a related topic again? So that is when in this section that you will be justifying that need of such a study. Also, keep in mind that the topic as such is not worked before. There is some new element in your study, and it is also worth pointing out towards the end of the review that your study is unique and there is no direct literature addressing this issue, that this is a new topic, that topic that you have chosen is a new topic, or there is some novel aspect to it. Also, add a few sentences about the significance of the research and how this will add value to the body of knowledge. Remember to add some sentences which says that how there is an existing body of knowledge, existing literature that is there on the same on similar topics or a related topic. So how your research will add something to that existing body of knowledge, that is also to be mentioned. The literature review section of a research paper should include previous literature, obviously that is what it is all about. Then limitations of previous research questions is to be mentioned here, and the research to be explored. This is what I have already explained. So the next is methodology. As I have already mentioned, this is not necessary for literary research, but you can include it depending on the topic. If the topic you are working on is more which has a social and some social aspects, if you are using different methods like survey, etc., so then you can include this part in your research paper. If not, this is not really necessary. And the section methodology, if you are including it, it follows the introduction section, it follows the literature review section also. And it provides a clear description of the experimental procedure, reasons behind the choice of specific experimental methods. Say for example, if you are using the survey as a method of your research, why do you use that method? Like that. It also explains the procedure step by step. If you are explaining the procedure step by step, you may include it with subheadings, chronologically explained with subheadings, and use past tense to describe what you did, since you are reporting on a completed experiment, because you already complete the experiment or complete the methods while you draft the paper. Therefore, it should be written in past tense. Also describe how the research question was answered through these methods, and how the results were analyzed, what methods did you use to analyze the results, and clearly explain various statistical methods used for significance testing and reasons behind the choice. This is not very important for us to discuss, so I'll just skip that part. So if at all you are including methodology section, The method sections of a research paper may include these things like experimental setups, data collection, data analysis, statistical testing, your assumptions, and remit of the experiment. The next part of a research paper is findings and discussion. This can also come as a part of the body. In a literary research main body, there need not be really a section which is titled findings and discussion, but for scientific research you should be having such a separate section, but in the case of literary research there need not be a particular section which is titled findings and discussion. However, definitely there will be findings and discussions in literary research as well, which comes or which is typically included within the main body of the writing. Now this is one of the challenging sections to write. So the purpose of a findings section is to present the key results of your research. What are the results of your research? So you have already had a thesis statement and you expected an outcome, whether the findings of that matches with your thesis statement. That is what you should be writing here. Results and discussions can either be combined into one section or organized as separate sections, as I have already told you, depending on the requirements of the journal to which you are submitting a research paper, or depending on the purpose of your research paper. It can be combined into a single section or as a separate section. Also remember that you use subsections and subheadings to improve the readability and clarity. Usage of subsections and subheadings to discuss the results is important. Then present your results as figures and tables in case of scientific research, and in case of social science research, point the reader to relevant items while discussing the results. While that is that would not be applicable to literary research as well. And also be sure to include negative results and highlight potential limitations of the paper. That is also something which is to be noted. If at all you are discussing the results, if the outcome is different from what you expected, that is also to be mentioned. Negative results are also to be included, and the potential limitations of the paper is also to be mentioned. Now again, if you have such a section like findings and discussions, the section should include findings, obviously, the comparison with prior studies, how the result that you got is different from what was there in the previous studies, the limitations of your work, casual arguments, your speculations, and deductive arguments. Next major part is conclusion and further scope. This is equally important in every research paper. So a research paper should end with a well constructed conclusion. What you understood from the research, that is what you should be including in this section. It should restate aims and objectives and also summarize main findings and evidence for the reader. Again, like how important introduction is, conclusion is also very, very, very important. In conclusion, you should be restating the aims of the research, your objectives, and then summarize the main points and main findings, so that the reader gets or recollects the major points which is represented in a paper. So this can be usually done in one paragraph with these three main key points, and one strong take home message. That is, main key points can be represented and one message. Like that, in one paragraph also you can write the conclusion. And remember, you should not include any new arguments in the conclusion. There should be nothing new in the conclusion part. Everything which you have already mentioned should be affirmed within the this section, and remember not to introduce anything new. And also the conclusion can have some open questions which will set the scene for the next study. For further scope, for further research, there can be some questions being added. Hence, the conclusion section of the research paper should include overall summary of the research, how you did it, what you did and all. Then the findings consolidated, what are your findings from the research, and also what are the scope for further research. All these things are to be included in the conclusion section. Acknowledgements and appendix is also one important part of a research paper, and it depends on appendix, mainly depends on what topic you have chosen. Acknowledgements may come in the beginning of the paper as well. When you are preparing your dissertation, PG or UG dissertation, you may use acknowledgements in the very beginning of the paper, and appendix towards the end of the paper if you are using it. And there is no standard way to write any acknowledgements. It can be either formal or an informal tone, because this section is to thank all the people who helped you with the project. So you are going to list out and remember them before submitting the paper. That is all it is about, and it can be written in formal or informal tone. And again, appendix is an optional part of a research paper. If you are working on something, a topic which includes a lot of figures or cross references or tables, you may use appendix. This is where you place supplementary materials which are referred in the main text. In the main text, you might be referring to some supplementary or extra materials. You will add all these things in the appendix part. There is no limit on what is to be placed in the appendix section. It can include figures, tables, cost, budgets, maps, all according to your research. Anything that is essential for the paper might be, but which might potentially interrupt the flow of the paper. That all that could be included in the appendix, because if you what you are including in the appendix, if you include that in the research paper as such, it may interrupt the flow of the paper. Therefore, that is when you use the appendix part. And now again, appendix is not very important in literary research. It all depends on what topic you are working on. So friends, that's all about the parts of a research paper. I think almost major parts of a research paper is covered. Because of time limit, I couldn't show you many examples or samples, but I'll share it with you anyways later. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.